There we go. Better late
Oh,
than never.
there you
Okay,
go.
so Lana,
Uh, no worries. You can hear me okay though, hey? Okay.
Go back to the
Um,
previous screen, the maps.
okay, so what happens is you have a follicle attached to this. It goes to Wildlife Genetics International, Dave Petcow in Nelson, BC, and he gives us a 21 loci DNA fingerprint. And he actually even matches that up and says, I believe this bear could be the mother. I believe this bear could be the father. But what DNA doesn't give you is age. So you need to piece those relationships together and figure out who's who in your zoo, right? So they're doing this back in 2004 to 2008. We're going to thank Clayton Apps for that work, Tony Hamilton, Steve Rochetta, and Bruce McClellan and Michelle McClellan. Okay, so they go there. Oh, not moving forward. Here we go. And here's what they get, right? They run them all through there and they get no bears detected in Garibaldi Pit. Zero. This is Whistler, by the way, and all those areas and everybody doing heli yoga and all that stuff, right? So there's zero. We do know that there is, they have now detected 2 bears in that whole unit. And then you have the Squamish-Lillooet, and they're detecting flow. There's gene flow through here. And together, there's about 200 bears. But there's way more in this Toba Butte area that's fed by the salmon. That's the bear viewing areas, right? And these bears are coming out, and they're helping all of these bears live in the Squamish-Lillooet area that's coming out here, right? In the Stein the Hatlatch, they thought there were 60 at least bears in there, and they realized there's 23. They DNA'd every single one of them, right? And they start coming up with these population fractures. And one of them is right here. See that one right there? That's Pemberton Meadows. It's a small population fracture. This is another one that comes from Gold Bridge, and this has to do with the Bridge River Dam and Reservoir. They put in the Bridge River Dam and Reservoir, and now they've created a population fracture, right? So we're dealing with these population fractures and trying to get these bears up going in here. So this is from Michelle McClellan, like I said, her PhD research in the South Chilcotin. So here you have on your x-axis year, right? So these are years, 2000 to 2020, and the density of bears based on these realized population growth. And you can see, oh, in the South Chilcotin, bears are starting to increase. They're starting to come out and expand. We're doing some stuff to go there. But in the Stein the Hatlatch, where there was only those 23 bears, they're continuing to decline. Hub mortality is really high. Density is low. The density is 1/3 that of what's in the Chilcotin. And these bears are becoming extremely isolated, a little island like you have in Yellowstone. So what do we do with that island, and how do we deal with it, right? So here we'll look again. So using this genetic data, they found that the populations, they varied in connectivity, depending on where they were. So we had some good connectivity between the South Chilcotin and the Squamish-Lillooet in the upper, in the upper elevation areas. This is back here past road closures that they put in. These are all dirt roads for logging. So we have some good connectivity going in here. We have some good connectivity flowing between the Toba Butte, these salmon bear viewing operations that you'll have in there from like Calahoose and Hamelco have bear viewing operations. Those bears are doing well in there. We have some good going in from the Toba Butte up to the South Chilcotin. But now we've got these fractures coming in. So here you see this little fracture going in here, right? This is Pemberton Meadows. This purple here, which I'm really going to talk to you about coming up here now. And you've got a little fracture here in this Gold Bridge area that I showed you before with that dam that we put in, right? Here we have complete fractures. We have 0 female bears crossing. So although a male may have crossed in here, they've got no detection of females at all going across these fractures. None. This is your Highway 99 up to Whistler, right? And then this is when you do the Portage Road up to Darcy, right? Nothing. No detection of female bears crossing there at all. None. It's complete fracture. How do we deal with that fracture, right? We've got a little fracture going on here. We know that that's going on. So how do we get these bears maybe to come out and help these bears in this core area? So we have this very limited movement, and we need to move up. And just so you know, we've got no movement across the Fraser. So across the Fraser, Big River, there's nothing being detected. That is a complete barrier. So now we're just working with this side of the equation. How do we move bears there? How do we bring them back before we lose them? Okay. So also, this is coupled with a GPS collaring program. Again, I do GPS collar bears, but this has nothing to do with me. I thank Steve Rochetta, Bruce McClellan, Michelle McClellan, Clayton Apps for these data. This is the collaring program that's going on here from 2005 to 2017. What you can see is one female bear actually did go to Whistler. She actually did make a little foray and checked out what was going on in the Garibaldi pit, an adult breeding female. She actually spent time in Whistler and no one saw her in little areas, and then came back in and went over here and do it. So we can't on an IUCN level say that this is not occupied by grizzly bears, because she did do this. And as soon as a female grizzly bear comes into a unit, it triggers by the IUCN criteria that is a rank. So they do go in there, but it's very, very rare. Okay. So let's look at the genetic and demographic isolation. So we call these FST scores. Basically, how isolated are the populations? And we do this by measuring the genetic difference between those populations. Okay, so you have the Stein way up here. It's not even close to these populations. So it means that the Stein's been separated for many, many generations, and that your females, your families are breeding together. So this is like this FST score is similar to islands in Alaska, where the bears can't get off, right? So it's extremely inbred, this population in the Stein. So how do we do this? The McGilvery ranges, this is basically the South Chilcotin here. And here you have your upper Lillooet branching off your Stein. So we know the population of all of the genetics, of all of these animals in there. And we know that we've got from here some reduced juvenile survival. We have reduced adult fertility. We have delayed primiparity. These bears, that means their age of first reproduction, it's not coming in until almost the double digits, 10 or 12. Litter sizes, though, staying the same when they have them, but they're not surviving. Okay? So we're trying to figure out what's going on with these populations and how do we connect them. So what are the causes of population fragmentation for this area? Well, we have high historic mortality coming in, so they're just shot out of there. You had the gold rush going back in there, that shot bears out of there. You have the current mortality going on, and you basically just have lost and degraded habitat, out of control recreation, all these things factoring in on the grizzly bears that are causing this population fragmentation. But what do we need to do for long-term coexistence? How do we get bears back here, and how do we coexist with them? Well, this requires connectivity. These populations, they have to be connected, right? Because what that gives a population is increased resilience. So if you have anything going on with your population as stochastic events, weather events, right, which we're having now, all these things that limit food supply, that alter food supply, right? You need this resilience for your population. We want our populations to have the genetics in there. And we need to maintain this meta population function. So there's a really great paper. It's Lam et al. I'm one of the authors on that paper in PNAS. And it talks about metapopulation functions and maintaining grizzly bears. And what he concluded in that paper is there has to be basically, not has to be, there was, he found 29 grizzly bears died to make one coexister. So for one grizzly bear to become the coexister in this coexistence landscape, 29 of them died. So it needed to be fed by a meta population, fed by these coastal populations. Connectivity is key, okay? So here's Michelle keeping going on with her work here on this really broad scale. She takes these GPS bear locations and she takes these habitat selection models, and I'm really not going to get into them with you because there's no need to. They're very mathematical. They're called resource selection functions. She puts this connectivity model on it, and she maps all of this to look at where bears are crossing based on the genetics and based on the GPS collar location. And this is an example of what a connectivity map looks like and how we take this broad scale. And what we're going to try to do is bring this down to your small scale here at Pemberton Meadows, where it's showing that there's connectivity between these four habitat types. right there. That's Pemberton Meadows. So let's take a look at it from a Google Earth image. These are some bear locations on here. It's your males that are mainly moving across. Your females are very, very limited. Their home ranges are divided. Okay, so here we go. And we need to take bears and take them and move them down and across the Lillooet River, which is across, this basically forms the boundary between your Squamish-Lillooet and your South Chilcotin Grizzly Bear population units. And we need to move them across and up here so that they can use this area. But what have we found here? Okay, well, we've got, oh, back. Why is that not coming on? Oh, it didn't do it at all. Okay, well, it should say. We've got as a big agricultural area down here. So this is all, these are all now farmlands that are producing agriculture. These, a lot of what comes out of Pemberton Meadows, just so you know, is what you're consuming in your supermarkets, right? Potatoes, carrots, and all those crops. So this is where my work really comes into play. So in 2019, it's 2019 now, they've done all this base work and they've got all these populations, and they say, Lana, we're coming to you. This is the Coast to Cascades Grizzly Bear Initiative, or we call it C2C, right? And they're trying to support the coexistence of grizzly bears throughout the entire North Cascades, all the way through Pemberton Meadows and north. And they say, we've got all this going on, and our science is showing us that bears are starting to recover in this area, and they're starting to come back. Now we need some support on the ground. Like, how do we move them across these two areas, and how do we deal with the people, you know, that are in these areas? So their objective was to ensure safe passage of bears through this meadow area. So I had to come in. They started their work in 2012, right? So they're trying to reverse the decline. And they, let's say, this is not just me, okay? So I come in there, but I'm in partnership with the Lillooet First Nation. This is their unceded territory, and they have a very high grizzly bear ethic within their First Nation values. I also have the local and provincial government, which I've shown you some of their research. I have independent research scientists doing all sorts of PhDs. And we've got agriculture and the residents themselves. So I want to know what's going on. So I look in there, I say, okay, what are the residents seeing? And I gather 15 years from the Conservation Officer Service of what are called at the time problem wildlife occurrence reports. And now they're called human wildlife occurrence reports. And I get them all for the last 15 years. And I take a look at them. And I say, what is happening with bears in this area? And I take them and I plot them on a map. So that's from 2004 to 2018. And now what I can see first off is there's a really, oh, I'm on the wrong screen again. There's a really big spatial separation. So you have up here, your reports in the upper meadows. That's where there are a whopping, in 15 years, 3 grizzly bear calls, the conservation line, right? The rest of them are black bears after I move it. And then it's all black bears down here by Pemberton. So to me, I'm saying, oh goodness, right? So I've got, in 2007, I've got chickens. Bears are trying to get chickens. In 2011, I got someone just sighting a bear. And in 2017, a calf was killed. And I'm like, okay, well, it's not very informative for me on how to proceed. So what do? I turn to the BC Bears program. This is an excellent program, not because I'm a co-author on it, which I am, but it is an excellent program to set up. It is because what it does is it acknowledges that each community, doesn't matter where you are in BC, it's going to be unique in your conflicts. And you have to understand what's going on in your community, what's happening with your conflicts in order to manage them. You have to get to the root cause. You can't manage superficially and reactive, or you're not going to get to what's going on. So it's each community is unique. So the first thing you do is what's called a bear hazard assessment. Then based on that bear hazard assessment, you come up with a management plan. So what is a bear hazard assessment? Well, as I said, it's a community-specific bear profile for human-bear conflicts. But what it represents, okay, is the likelihood of a bear becoming food conditioned and or habituated to humans. These are two separate behaviors. Food conditioning and habituation are separate behaviors. That's a different talk, but if you want to see it, it's a good talk. But it doesn't represent the probability of simply encountering it. So it's not like I'm going to go out there and see a bear. It's not. Take the humans out of it. It's hard for us to think of that. It's what takes this little gaffer who's trying to have safe passage across the road in Pemberton Meadows and does it make them this big guy who's feeding on someone's garbage they've left in their backyard or similar. This is not Pemberton Meadows. They do not have a garbage problem. But what is the probability of this little dude becoming this, right? That's what a bear hazard assessment does. What is the hazard to the bear? So it's area-specific coexistence recommendations. So that required me to go. I needed to visit the site. I needed to know what was going on area-specific because I've got 3 reports to go on. I've got nothing. I have no idea what's going on with grizzly bears in this area. It's like I can't even believe, they're coming back. There's only 3 calls in 15 years, right? So I need to go see what's going on. I need to talk to the residents. And then I need to look at the bear occurrence and mortality reports, what I did. So this is interesting. Like I have this picture given to me. You'll notice this is 2016. A large grizzly bear turns out to be a male. We got his DNA on a livestock carcass, not in the occurrence reports. Never ever reported, wasn't considered a problem, right? That's interesting. Keep that in mind as we keep going on with this presentation. So what I need to do, what I decide I want to do is, okay, I want to take these bears here. If you listen to a talk that Michelle ever gives, she's going to talk about Tinquel Mountain and how one time she actually saw 16 grizzly bears feeding on huckleberries on Tinquel Mountain and trying to move them down here. So I'm like, okay, what we need to do is take those bears, move them down these drainages here. And I want to connect them up with a little lake that I fell in love with named Oxbow Lake when I was there on my site visit. And I want to take them from Oxbow Lake and I want to move them across the river and over to this side. Right? So that is my plan. Pemberton Meadows is an agriculturally based community. Because of that, we've got restrictions on the land use due to its location within the agricultural reserve, but you also have restrictions. They're allowed to do a lot more with grizzly bears than anyone else is because of the agricultural status. So what do they produce? They produce bovine livestock, potatoes, grains, carrots, which are, by the way, are grizzly bear's favorite food, and hay. Those are prioritized in these areas. And I need to move them across these areas safely to the other area. Let's take a look at what they look like. Just to give you a little idea what your boots on the ground look like. This is Tinquel Mountain. These are glacier lilies. Take a look at it coming down here. This is a grizzly bear's favorite food. It's a little bit like, looks a little bit like a big garlic bulb. They dig them up, they till all the soils, right? And they're gonna come down. This is Oxbow Lake. It's high quality habitat for grizzly bears and many other species because it's a little wetland area. So I wanna know, okay, who are residents, what are they seeing on their property and what are they reporting? Like, what am I dealing with when I only have 3 things? So I administer them and make a survey. And I go and ask them. Now, as you see here, it's just 16 respondents. And you might think, oh, it's only 16 respondents. That means nothing. But it's really a large area because these are huge acreages. And when I talk to one person, they may manage like multiple farms. So they're actually responsible for a lot of acreages. So when you actually plot it out who I talk to almost everybody in the Upper Meadows area to ask them what was going on. So 100% of them, everybody has black. They're all dealing with black bears all the time, right? Coyotes are the next. And it turns out grizzly bears are 3rd. I'm like, wow, grizzly bears rank 3rd, but yet you have 3 reports. So they're not reporting them. They're not a problem. It's very infrequent, right? They're seeing them. So, okay. So I go on, I'm like, okay, so you're seeing grizzly bears. When are you seeing, right? So they're like, 50% of them, 57% of them, the majority of them it's the fall. They're coming in the fall, followed by the spring. They're coming down in the spring. Then you only just have basically one person saying all seasons except winter and one person saying the spring and fall. but the vast majority of the fall and the spring. And I'm saying, well, how are they, like, how much use are they having of your area? And the majority of them are saying, oh, really low use, 69%, really low use in my area, right? No use, 19%. Only one respondent is saying high use. That's it. Only one respondent. So then I'm saying for them, okay, so why do you think the bears are on your area? Like, why do you think you're seeing them? What attractants do you have? You know, what are they doing when they're there? And the vast majority of these people are saying nothing. Nothing at all. No attractants. So the majority of them are saying nothing at all. Not there at all. Some carrots, right? Some gardens and compost, but most of them are like, no, they're just passing through. They're having some grass, you know, some sedge, whatever. They're just passing through. Okay, great. So I'm saying, okay, can I create safe passage for grizzly bears? Can grizzly bears and people coexist? So with grizzly bears, and with particularly, you have this massive spectrum. You have people who love bears. They want to hug them and kiss them, and you know, they're all Disney about them. And then you have people that are scared to death of them. They want to run from them. They think that a bear even remotely near them is going to kill them. So, and then you have everything in between, right? So I need to know, well, exactly what is going on with what they feel about them, because that's really important to bringing them back to an area and how I will target education messaging for them in that area. So I need to gauge the social carrying capacity. So don't forget, this is before they come back. This is all this work is done in 2019. So I'm trying to find this challenge, this balance. Where can bears live and people feel safe? So I asked them this question, you know, is it good, economically viable for you to have grizzly bears on your area? And 56% of the respondents report that there were negative economic impacts in the presence of wildlife on their property. 56 say it's negative. And this monetary loss I asked them about ranged from 0, which was the majority of them, 69%, but to over 10,000. Those are the people that had cattle losses, that lost them cows. So I also asked them about positive impacts. I said, what positive impacts do you have from having grizzly bears on your property? And the majority of them, 81%, said there are no positive impacts for me to have grizzly bears on their property. So I'm like, oh, okay. So there's not negative, positive, but no one's reporting them. 3 are being reported, so why? So I asked them, okay, what are your values in regards to wildlife conservation? So basically, why are you doing it? Why are you not reporting them? You know, why are they not being a problem? So 69% of them said it's the right thing to do. Wildlife conservation is the right thing to do. And then we have 62, and if you add that to your 37.5 beside it, you've got 100% of respondents telling you that it's important to be a good neighbor. It's important to respect your neighbors and to not leave things out to make bears problems, to make a bear become a problem, right? It's important to do good by your neighbor. Then you have 50% or 75% saying it's just a high priority for me. It's something I should be doing. And these are families that have lived and moved to Pemberton areas for generations. So these are farmers with long-seated roots in living in this area. So I say to myself, well, this is great, because in all honesty, the vast majority seem to want grizzly bears to come back. They seem to want them to go through. So now how can I take all of this information and move them from point A to point B through the meadows without getting them trapped? It's called ecological traps. I don't want them to stay in this area, eat this chicken like this guy's doing here, right? I want to move them from here, Tanquil, through Oxbow over to here. How can I do that? When I've got things like this, I've got apiaries and farms. I have a major cranberry operation that also runs a major commercial blueberry operation. And I have just residential fruit trees and gardens. So you'll see an electric fence here, but this obviously is not good enough to deter a bear. How do I get them through this area without getting them trapped, without making that little cub that big guy feeding on garbage? So I proposed 2 linkage corridors. So let's say now I had showed you Michelle's work, and now Michelle's in and she's working in with me in partnership, but she's on a different time scale trying to get PhD stuff done, and I've got to get this work done. So I'm producing corridors and proposing designs before Michelle has had a chance to model them, because we need to move the work forward. So although we're trying to work together, we'll just keep moving it forward. I also come from a modeling background, having done my PhD with Mark Boyce, who's a major modeler. So I know how to read these models. So I'm like, okay, let's propose 2 corridors. I'm going to propose one. I'm going to call it the Oxbow Lake corridor, and it's going to move bears from the north to the south. And I'm going to propose another one. And normally you would say you wanted to do these east-west linkages, but if you look at it just the way the terrain flows, it's kind of a southwest linkage. And I'm going to call this the Camel's Back corridor. And I'm going to try to do that. I'm going to go do some on-site evaluations with these corridor designs and just keep moving forward. So I do that. And here we go. All right. These outlined here in the light blues are properties. They're current properties, right? These are bear locations going on in here, GPS locations, right? What I come up with here is I'm saying that this is the concept for what I call the Oxbow Lake corridor design. Okay, and you're looking at GPS locations, and I'm trying to move them from here, down here, into here, to Oxbow Lake, across the Lillooet River. Now this, I should have made these red lines heavier, but if you can see these red lines at all, this is a wetland conservation area for something called the Salmon Slough. I want to move bears through the wetland conservation area, skirting this property that I'd like someone to buy, mixing them up to what I call the Camelback. The Camelback requires a conservation easement because it runs along the back of properties, right? And I want to move them that way through here. So let's talk a little bit about this corridor design. Now, Michelle comes back online. She's defended her PhD. She's doing some more modeling. This modeling she's done for the entire landscape at the broad scale, at the large picture scale, where she's looking at all of these units together, whereas I'm just focusing down, right? She's taking a look at this. How does this work? Well, lo and behold, guess what this is? With the highest connectivity value, Pemberton Meadows. It says, if you're going to move bears, move them across here. If you're going to move bears, move them across here, right? This is what I've already done in moving them across here. This is the designs I've come up with. So it's describing them. And what we want to restore this or take it to safe habitat, right? If this becomes a subdivision, we're screwed. We can't move them across here, right? So we want to take them now with these large acreages and things and go on and move them across and allow this connectivity to continue and link up these populations. Let's take a look at the Oxbow Lake corridor on the ground so I can show you people what it looks like. Here we're up in the South Chilcotin, one of Michelle's remote camera pictures. We want to take these bears. We want to move them down to Oxbow Lake. We want to move them through the Salmon Slough, right? And we want to edge these people's properties and then buy properties that support this design. Okay, so the recommended property purchases here are highlighted in blue. As you can see, we're trying to reestablish the link. And why are we trying to do this, right? What it's called is demographic rescue. If these populations that are going to become strongholds for grizzly bears, and these mums are going to use it, they can nurse in there, and then eventually they have to disperse out. It's just how grizzly bears work. They can't all live in there. They move themselves out. They will naturally repopulate those units if we can support the recovery and keep them alive. If we can do this, we got it, right? So we need to do this. Now, these wetlands that I'm also proposing, and these things that come through here, this whole wetland design doesn't just say grizzly bears. There's a number of species. From birds, there's spotted owl protection area in here, but the wetlands areas from birds, from salmonoids, from your amphibians, you name it, right? You're protecting a number of species when you do this. Look at Michelle's, this is the connectivity modeling. The other one I showed you was more properties, or the value of the properties themselves. This is the potential for connectivity from the GPS collars, and you can see it's predicting exactly what I predicted in the design that I kind of said that we need to have. We need to move them down. Here's your camelback. Here's your high movement areas, and we want to move them across these areas. So we're doing very well. Let's take a look at the camelback corridor. Let me show you what it looks like when we're on the ground. What's super interesting about this is that, like I said, I can't thank Steve Rochetta and Bruce McClellan and Clayton Apps enough for allowing me to view their GPS data. Steve Rochetta told me that this is a grizzly bear nursery. This is where the females are. This is how they're moving them out, okay? And what's interesting is NCC has actually purchased a property, the Miller property down here. It links in and hooks up to this camel's back corridor, which is this grizzly bear nursery. And we want to save our females. I'm sorry, boys. Females are where it's at. We're the reproductive unit, especially for bears. So we want the females and we want to support the females. Here's what it looks like here. There's just super ease of movement. You can walk through here. It's super nice once you get there. It used to be, I looked into it, an old logging road. You're not putting any motorized vehicles down there now. It's all over. You're going over under stuff, but it's very, very nice. Ease of bears to travel. We've got marked trees. We have prints, everything in there that we need to help it become a functioning corridor. So how do we support this now, right? Okay, like I said, we need safe passage across here. So C2C, Conservation Northwest, right? They started a cost-sharing initiative program. So this is on-site support. And what they did in the beginning is 70% they paid for, 30% the landowners paid for. This is the Van Loon family. This is a fabulous conservation family. First ones to put in. They run commercial carrots. And we bring in Jeff Marley from Margot Supplies Leaded, who's like, this is what he does, is grizzly bear fencing. So this is all the right come up, the number of strands, the voltage. He teaches the farmers how to maintain it, how to work with it, how to contact him if they're having any problems. The whole supported program that Conservation Northwest is doing. Let's take a look at the cost of this, okay, or who's doing it, these cost share locations. So what you can see here is the corridor for Oxbow Lake that we're trying to support. So we've got fences in here, right? It's going to link up to the camelback, and we're fencing all through here, and we're just supplying all these. This is the NCC property that was purchased that supports, this line falls under the blue here, so you can't see it, but that follows this camel's back corridor up here, trying to move them across the meadows safely. Let's take a look at what does this cost us. So who signed up? So we just started it, right, in 2022. So we got these farms that have all signed up. And if you look at it, we estimated 22 acres have been electric fenced and are trying to support this program. And we have one resident signed up now, but I go to the field on Friday, and we're doing a full-on e-fence program with Jeff coming in. We have a number of farms signed up again. What does it look like? Let me give you an idea of a commercial farm. Here's your carrots that you're going to buy when you go to the store. Same on foods. We're e-fencing them. Here's the carrots. Here's the grizzly bear family. They can no longer get there. These are the potatoes of the Van Loons. Bears don't like raw potatoes. Similar to us, we're not going to munch on raw potatoes. They have a monogastric stomach. They can't handle that. We can leave them not fenced, right? But we're all this ultimate coexistence. Here's a grizzly bear feeding on the grasses and sedge, and here's their horses, right? What we're going for is coexistence. Now we target our education program. So like I said, we did the Bear Smart initiatives. We're not just handing out any pamphlet you see. You're not just grabbing a pamphlet. No way. This is targeted. We've made this for you. This comes out of your bear hazard assessment. Here's what you told me. Here's how we're going to support you. Here's what I found. So like I said, I did this work in 2019. Unfortunately, of course, COVID hit. I couldn't get back in. As soon as I could get back in, I did go back in. Here's a presentation in March 2022 to just the residents of the Meadows. That's what we were limited to with the COVID restrictions, but I went back in and immediately presented to them, here's what we found, here's how we plan to go forward. Let's listen to your concerns. These are the people living with these bears, right? Here's back in 2023, the fall. This is with Bruce McClellan. He went back in. This is, you can see everybody's in a round circle here. All the residents, they're able to talk, freely exchange. What are your concerns, right? How do we do this? How do we move it forward, right? Coexistence. Here's what we're hearing from some residents, okay? Increasing our persistent bear conflicts can result in negative attitudes. Coexistence is nerve-wracking and potentially dangerous. I don't feel that I should shoulder the full burden of coexistence. And let me tell you something, neither should they. Coexistence is something when you think about it, and living with grizzly bears is something when you don't live with them, that's like, oh yeah, I could do that, until they're really in your backyard and you realize, I need to send my kids to the school bus. And they're walking past Clover and her kids, right? How do I do that? Does everybody go with bear spray? I want to show you what coexistence looks like. All right, I'm hoping that played for you. That gives you an idea of these people's pool and the fact that they have bears right in their backyard. What are the other trapping of success? So like I said to you here, we need these bears. We need them to go from these healthier populations and go into here and help rescue them. Because in British Columbia, we're looking at losing populations of grizzly bears. And that is crazy to me, right? What happens if you build it, they will come? Suddenly, here we are, Pemberton Meadows, this is last year. Okay, the residents are reporting 8 grizzly bears in the meadows that they can count and keep track of. This is Clover and her 2 cubs of the year. She's a big resident there. We know her mom is Betty. We know her dad is Brutus. We know she comes from the South Chilcotin ranges. That was up in the Tenquel. We know she's made her way down there and living in, we know this is the second set of cubs she's brought down there. Now we've got 8 in there. Suddenly, a tour company shows up from Whistler. And they are bringing people in van loads to the meadows. And these people are stopping on the road and viewing with binoculars and cameras into people's fields and private places. This is where these people live. So suddenly there's people taking pictures all day long when these people are in their kitchen of these bears. And they're getting out of their vehicles and they're standing there with these bears there, and they're extremely habituating the bears to people, so making them less afraid of them. So we get on that, and let me tell you, this took me a while to get shut down because there was nothing the government could do about it. They were viewing from public roads. It was insane. So I went to the Lillooet Nation and I asked the nation, I said, this is on your unceded territory. It's going on. It's compromising the conservation of your recovery. And the Lillooet Nation stepped up and they actually got it shut down because they didn't have permits from the nation to do anything in the territory, right? That's how we managed to deal with it. But by this point, it was a little late, and Clover and her babies are very habituated. She's not doing anything, but she's everywhere. Okay. So I'd look back. Remember I told you I looked at 15 years of reports and I had 3. Now I'm looking at 2019 to 2023. And I've got 25 independent calls last year. And I look at where they are, right? Most of them are sightings, sure. But now I've got apparently 2 bluff charges. Turns out these were mainly due to a small dog and it aggravating her. I've got actually livestock predation. I've got a predation attempt, right? In a vegetable garden that we have yet to fence, right? And now let's take a look at where the seasons are. Every single season they're being reported. Everyone. So while it's still bigger in fall at 51%, going right into winter. Clover's out and her babies, right? Right into winter through some spring and winter. So now we're really getting calls to the Conservation Officer Service. So I got some challenges going on here because you have to deal with residents, and they're all, like I said, people are on a spectrum. And I have grain silos. So I don't know if you can see this under here, but this is a black bear family. When I went to do the bear hazard assessment, they're all eating grain, and this has been going on for years. There's tons and tons and tons of spilt grain, but it's fine with black bears. It's a different thing. When the grizzly bear came in, killed and ate the black bear on the property, and now it's taken over the grain silo. So now you've got these scats of grain. So the Wildlife Act has certain exemptions for farmers, and this is something we need to deal with. We need to find the coexistence here on what's going on in order to bring these bears back. So the government, like I said, they did some great things. They did some research. I showed that research to you when we did it at the beginning. They had some great things. And then they actually put in motorized access gates here up at the top of the Camelback where it wanted it, and the start of the Ryan, we got motorized access gates, super important for bringing bears back. You've got to control the motorized access. Wonderful of them. Last I've seen of them. Where is government? Why is this an NGO funded initiative and project? Why are the NGOs funding me to come in and do work? How can I get government more involved in the on the ground recovery that is needed? These residents need support. They need support because negative attitudes breed dead bears. So what are the lessons that I've learned in this work that I'm doing? I've learned that recovery takes a village. It takes the Lillooet Nation, thank you. It takes the provincial government. It takes the regional district. It takes the Pemberton Wildlife Association, my funders, the Coast to Cascades Grizzly Bear Initiative, and it takes the residents themselves. This cannot be done alone. This is not one person's work. It highlights the importance of using a multi-scaled, multi-stakeholder approach to coexistence, to long-term coexistence. It's what we have to have. We all need to be working together. I want to leave you with a quote, a very powerful thing a colleague of mine said. If habitat connectivity is one critical key to conservation in a climate changing world, human-wildlife coexistence is the currency that will help buy it. Okay, I'd like to thank a number of people in my village for working to keep bears healthy and wild. Without all of these people and organizations, this work would not be possible. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Lana. I would like to encourage anyone online to please put your questions into the chat. And Lana, I'm hoping that you can access the chat from where you are. But I'll turn to the floor here. Do we have any questions from those of you here at Berwick?
I'm trying to find my questions. Everybody's over top of them. I think I need to.
I'm sorry, Lana, you can't see your questions?
I can't move the bar oh, here we go. I'm hoping I can see questions. I think I might need to minimize my screen.
Or enter the subject.
Or enter. Oh, and your shared screen, your slideshow.
Just trying to find the question.
Oh, I'm able to see it here, Lana, so I'll share the one question that's come up. How long is this study and work going on for?
Like, how long is it going to continue into the future?
I guess so, it's not clear.
Well, let's see. I'm heading to Pemberton Meadows on Friday, and we are going to be doing the DNA ourselves this year as C2C, hopefully gathering the genotypes. So definitely this year, I'm going to say until recovery happens, they're pretty committed. So what we need to do is for these bears to reach out and then somehow make their way into the stein, and I'm not seeing that in the near future.
It doesn't seem like the kind of thing that will change overnight, but I sure appreciated learning from you just how many people and directions it takes to get a full picture of what's happening and what can happen. So if there's, oh, I have a question from the floor, yes?
I'm wondering if there's any current grizzly activity in the adjacent area. It's the North Cascades. The benefit of watching you in the forest growing. So I'm wondering, are there any grizzly bears that occupy the North Cascades area?
So the question is, are there grizzly bears occupying the North Cascades area?
Yeah, we haven't had a sighting of the grizzly bears in the North Cascades for years. We're looking at actually putting grizzly bears back into the North Cascades. That's a whole different initiative, but also a Coast to Cascades initiative. Just not one that I'm super actively involved with yet at the time, but the US is looking at reintroductions of grizzly bears into the North Cascades as we speak.
Wow. Yes, another question from the floor, Lana?
Have you been able to develop any of the local farmers as the strong advocates for what you're doing?
So the question was, have any of the local farmers come on board as strong advocates for your work?
Oh, for sure. So the Van Loons, that family I showed, yeah, they are our champions. So we have a lot of strong advocates. So we have a lot of people signing up for the electric fencing program. We have a lot of good support in that area. It's a really interesting area because a lot of the families are old settling families and they've been in there for generations. So some of them remember when grizzly bears used to actually cross that valley. Like I showed you the Miller picture from 1960 where they had the female, the mother and her cubs dead and skinned on the wall and sold them, right? So they used to come through there. And so they remember that and they want to bring it back. So the Miller family, for example, donating that property or selling it for whatever to NCC, right, to bring that up. That's a whole conservation initiative, and they are a family in there. So there's a number of them that are very supportive of what we're doing.
Wow, that's amazing that it was the same family. Any further questions here? All right, Lana, the final message that came in by chat was a message of gratitude towards you. So I'll echo that. Thank you for a very, very interesting presentation. And thanks to everyone who hung in there through our technological issues. We got it. And thanks for your patience, Lana. It was really, really lovely to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, thanks to everyone, and we'll see you at the next presentation.